Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of She Collects Cards. I have the honor of hosting Bryan Fireside Cards again on this channel and introduce you to a new face. His name is Max, a very good friend of Bryan. Welcome, guys.
Thanks so much for having us. I'm so excited to be joining you, Hannah and Bryan, two incredible collectors and, more importantly, two incredible people.
Yeah, and welcome back, Bryan.
What's up, Hannah?
I mean, I feel like my channel now is like pseudo Bryan's channel because everyone just wants to see him and I'm just kind of like his EA. But I bring these two wonderful gentlemen onto my channel today to talk about F1. And I know that's like something that has been the topic of discussion, at least in some of the couple episodes that I've released. And they are kind of the key people in my circle of friends, certainly, who started the train. So I wanted to get the OG folks on the call here today to talk about F1, the sport itself in general, beyond my knowledge that I have just based on what I watched on Netflix, as well as making the connection from F1, the sport itself, to the potential that it has in the collecting side as well. And so I'll open up the floor, you guys. Like, I know you have a ton of knowledge to drop, and we'll definitely have sequels to this if you are okay with that. But first, let's just talk the sport itself, like F1. Like, how long has it been around? Like, is it watched by 100 people, 100,000 people? Like, how big is this? Like, how big are we talking here?
Well, it's actually just the championship alone has been going on for like almost, I think, 70 years, maybe longer. People have been racing cars for a long time, and Formula One is kind of has always been known as the fastest, most competitive, private kind of competition at the top of the international. And especially there's strong British roots too, for as racing goes. And yeah, it's got a pretty big global audience, definitely not as big as the US, but they've had races in Long Beach, at Indianapolis, I think maybe in New York, I could be wrong there. But right now there's only one US Grand Prix in Austin compared to almost 19 and in the future, even 20 or 21 other places in the world. With that said, we're getting another Grand Prix next year in Miami. The big, elephant in the room is Drive to Survive, this Netflix show that I really love. And it's one of how I kind of rediscovered a love of Formula One. And it's drawing a lot of US eyeballs just because I think people are realizing there's so many nuances of the sport beyond champions, beyond just following, who's at the very top. But so many of the really exciting battles in Formula One are down the grid. And right now there's only about 10 teams, and there has been more in the past, but that means we only really have 20 players in any given year to collect.
Right. That's crazy.
Formula One, I think, for the average American is a lot bigger than you'd imagine. And I say that because I actually grew up watching Formula One because my mom was a huge Formula One fan.
Oh, nice.
She had a huge crush on Michael Schumacher. And yeah, and I just to add on to Max there a little bit, I think, a lot of countries really rally behind DR driver, a lot more than you think. Sometimes even as much as the soccer players in that country. So for example, if you're Colombian, you probably know who Juan Pablo Montoya is, just because he's like a legend there. But to the average, person, you probably don't know who he is. And the second point that I would like to add is that it has a much larger female audience than you would think. And, I always thought that...
it's not just Bryan's mom, is what you're telling us.
Yeah, it's not just my mom. But even relating back to the Netflix Drive to Survive, Max was the one who got me hooked back onto the show, into F1. And I've introduced it to a bunch of my female friends, including my girlfriend, and she's hooked, and her cousin is hooked. And, I think it has a much broader reach for both females and males than you'd think.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And something about cars, like speed, we know a close friend who's also into cars a lot, and yeah, there's just something about speed and the male attraction to that, as well as the females that are attracted to the males that are attracted to the speed part. I could never like understand why, but it's a full circle certainly. And so I think it's interesting, like you mentioned, the audience may not just be dominantly male in this case. But guys, like maybe like educate us on what's the difference between F1, 2, 3, 4? What are some of the salaries like for these guys? Are they equivalent to like a regular bench warmer in the NBA, or are we talking much bigger?
So it's pretty crazy. So there are, F1 is, outside of F1, which it costs, anywhere from at least $100 million all the way to 400 or $500 million rumored to field the top tier teams in Formula One.
Wow.
It does cost a lot to field any driver in any of these race competitions. The car, the mechanics, the research, parts, everything, and then also the driver's salary is a massive part of it. So there's a lot of feeder series that go into F1, namely Formula 2, which is a newer name for the major feeding series, where everyone's actually racing the exact same car in Formula 2 as supplied by one manufacturer. So it's a lot easier in Formula 2 to judge pure skill, maybe. So that's oftentimes like we'll see Formula 2 champions, really folks that are at the top of Formula 2 with that other money component as faces in Formula 1. For even Formula 1 drivers that are just entry-level drivers, especially if you're on a team that doesn't make as much money or doesn't pull as much money from sponsorships, which is a major financing component to the team, you might not be getting paid a very large salary.
Interesting. Yeah, that's very interesting. I know like there was a point in time in the NBA as well where they started to receive sponsorship, each team did.
Right.
And we knew how much revenue impact that brought in, but that's a very interesting point. And, like I run a collecting channel, so we have to connect it back to the collecting aspect of this. So Topps this year took a big sort of gamble, in my opinion, and released an F1 set, both in the regular Topps Chrome and Topps Chrome Sapphire editions.
3 actually, including the Dynasty
The
set.
Dynasty, right.
So we've got 3 out right now.
Right. And I know you guys have broken like more boxes than you can count, certainly of these sets. Like, what's your take on them so far? Like, do you think they did a good job? What are some cards that like really took you back in terms of like its condition or like its quality? And what cards should the audience be looking for when they break these brand new Topps Chrome waxes?
Totally. First things first too. So Formula One, it's really interesting. So the entire business of Formula One is owned by one company called Liberty Media. So they control the rights to, licensing essentially the entire sport and owning all of the content to different companies, different companies like Topps or say ESPN for exclusive rights. And also there is no players union. There's a drivers association, but there isn't a union. There aren't multiple people so much to negotiate with if they're current drivers, in the same way that, we're only seeing autos from certain players and certain sets, or we're seeing people omitted, or different leagues. Formula One, almost you could relate it to like being the Champions League, and this is the Topps Chrome equivalent of like, this is the one specific subsect of driving with just these 20 teams. Obviously it's one of the biggest, it's one of, global, but we haven't really seen, because Liberty Media and Formula One control who they print cards with. We're not going to see cards in other sets or across other brands. There is going to be kind of this, it's going to be a little bit more seamless. Jumping into Topps and what they've done with Formula One, I think it's really awesome. They led the product kept getting slid back. I'm sure there was issues with autos and the pandemic. These products were supposed to come out last fall, or even I think beginning of summer last year. I remember being really excited and telling Bryan like, hey, I think I just pre-ordered 2 boxes. And then we went to our local card shop and they were like, we haven't even heard of this product. We'll let you know if anything happens. But, it was pushed back so many times. And the first product that came out was the Topps Dynasty. I know Dynasty is a fairly newer high-end product for Topps, but I thought the cards looked awesome. We didn't get a chance to pre-order them, but we were able to open a case, so 5 boxes with Bryan. And yeah, we love the cards, from the first time, so many of us as Formula One fans, or if you were just buying this product before it came out, the checklist didn't really show up until the very, very end. And it was kind of hard to guess what the checklist would be. So we ended up with a bunch of team principles. So I think they're cool cards, but having a jersey auto of a boss's polo or a dress shirt might not have been as cool. You know, we're used to thinking of jerseys, or
Right.
especially for Formula One, racing suits, gloves, you know, all these different things that they wear is a little cooler than, you know, the company polo.
Sure, that makes sense.
So, and then that followed with Topps Chrome, which I think is a gorgeous, gorgeous product. Topps did a really, really nice job of blending together some of the Formula One fonts and the designs. I think a little more controversial with the inserts with track tags and World on Wheels for them. So World on Wheels, I think, is an older Topps product that they use for Le Mans and a couple of their older racing formats. And then I believe track tags is brand new. It's kind of got this like graffiti-ish twist.
I like it.
It's a cool, I think it's a really, really cool set. And we've got a regular Topps card coming later this year for the 2021-22 season, I believe. But it's very cool seeing that there's in succession going to be so many new Formula One products. Because at the core of it, there's still not too much change or not too much prospecting beyond Formula 2 drivers, of which very few get promoted every year. And we did get a lot of them this year. Most Formula One rookies come from Formula 2 because they have to go through getting something called a super license. So yeah, and then on the note of Bryan and my experience opening it, you know, we were so excited. There's not a lot of parallels compared to a lot of other sets, since there's only a hobby box format. There is something that we didn't know about that wasn't really talked about, was the 70th anniversary parallel, of which when we were opening Topps Chrome seemed like it came out to about one per box, and it came in gold, orange, and a super refractor. I've seen some rumors about those being roughly numbered, like the super refractor versions of those 70th anniversary non-numbered parallels at just 2. But those I thought were really cool cards, and that little 70th anniversary Formula One logo is really cool. And then everything else other than just regular refractors is numbered. So it does feel very special, but there are an overwhelming amount of inserts. Granted, they are of some pretty awesome drivers. So it is quite hard to hit the base driver. So there's one for each driver, 1 through 20. It's a pretty rare hit to begin with, to hit one of those base drivers, cards number 1 through 20.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, aesthetically, the Topps Chrome set looks amazing. I mean, Max gave a very detailed explanation of the Topps Chrome set. But I guess to kind of like reiterate a little bit back to what I observe in the card market at the moment. Yeah, essentially, here are the key cards to collect. You have the base variation, and then you have the F2 drivers, and then you have the team principles. And they all come in different parallels. Now, what's happening in the card market is that everyone is chasing Hamilton, which is cool. But I also caution people that this is nowhere near his rookie year. In fact, he's nearing retirement.
And
yeah. But what I feel is like really cool about the Topps Chrome set is the number of new drivers and rookies there are in it. And when you invest in F1, that's essentially the bet that you're going to make. You know, there are rookie card logos on there, so which makes it even cooler. And on top of that, there are also a lot of F2 drivers on there, which means that a lot of those cards that are worth $1 or $2 today could be worth a lot more in the future should those drivers make it to F1 and forward. Another interesting thing about this set is that there is no fixed number for the autos of each driver.
Even the auto cards in the base parallel, the refractor, are numbered. Like every single card as autos go are numbered in Topps Chrome.
Yeah, so every single auto card is like a different number out of a different number.
Gotcha.
Which is very strange. So yeah, it's definitely interesting. But overall, if you're a collector and you like F1, it's such a beautiful set to collect. It's really fun. The quality control is a little iffy, I have to say. So if you plan on grading the Topps Chrome cards, just be very careful, especially when you hit the purple refractors, because they have that mini dent up there. So just be
sometimes at the bottom too. Yeah.
Lots of print lines. Lots of print lines. So I can't say too much about the Sapphire because I've not broke a lot of that yet. I haven't broken any of that yet. But this could mean something, this could mean something that a PSA 10 in a top Scrum could
Be like a diamond.
than a Sapphire,
Mm-hmm.
just for that reason. So yeah, I mean, that's my take on the top Scrum.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And then some like highlights I would say and about the top Scrum set is that Bryan touched on it briefly, is that there's also 10 variation cards of 10 of the base drivers. Those are super, super short printed in Topps Chrome. I think they're a little bit more common in Sapphire, but they're an alternate image. They're usually sitting down. Those cards are awesome. I really, really love those cards. So those are definitely one to keep an eye out for, especially of your favorite driver that you're prospecting or kind of betting on. Because, we're coming off of a period of Mercedes and Lewis and the whole team being really successful over the past almost 10 years, really, after Red Bull's done so well. But it's kind of anyone's game after 2022 when they completely redesigned the cars. We know who's great drivers, but cars are such a big component to it too. So if you are looking to prospect, I think if you decide that you've got that once you see prices come down to a place where you can afford them, there's a lot of really exciting people to prospect with. And the field, for the most part, it's so, like Bryan said, the drivers that are in F1 right now, so many of them are so young, and there's a lot of great Formula 2 drivers too on the way.
Yeah, and I mean, thanks for walking through the latest release of the Topps products. Certainly really exciting. And I do think that while the number is not public, it was very short printed as a whole, just because of the popularity of its collectible cards currently. But if this F1 collecting does kind of grow, I think the scarcity factor of these cards and boxes will play take into play. But I remember, I think, Bryan, you had a Topps Now card of Lewis Hamilton. Is Topps Now a product that was released prior to these sets?
Yeah, so to be honest, I'm going to give Max full credit on this because he really spotted it early, like October early.
Oh, wow.
And so before Topps Chrome was released, Topps Now released a lot of momentous F1 F1 occasions. One of them I have right here, which is Lewis Hamilton's. This is Max's card, by the way, and he bought one for me. Very sweet. So this is Lewis Hamilton's first Topps Now card. And this is in a PSA 10 is going for about $4,000. And it's interesting because, a lot of people view this as the rookie card, not the Topps Chrome. And there's this big debate right now, which is the rookie card, the Topps Now or the Topps Chrome. And relating back to soccer a little bit, is a very interesting card by Erling Haaland, who's obviously his Topps Chrome blew up like crazy. He has a Topps Now card before his Topps Chrome was released. That was just is really rare to find. Topps Now is interesting because Verstappen also has a Topps Now card from his first Grand Prix victory, I think.
So that year, it came a lot later in the season too, which is really interesting.
Yeah, and so a lot of people view these as their rookie cards because technically, what is a rookie card? It's the card that came first, And who is Jordan's rookie card? It's the star card. What is
I think
rookie card? It's the Euro card. But obviously, there's the Fleer. Obviously, there's the first Prism. So that's something just to keep note of for sure.
I think for Hamilton, and I'm kind of new into this. I believe there was a card of his released in 2006. Whether it's a card or a sticker, I'm not too sure. Oh, there you go.
Awesome. There it is.
And this, again, spotted out by Max very early on. Yeah, that
might have been Miles. I think we got to give a shout out to Miles.
LAFC Gunnar.
LAFC Gunnar for that one.
Yeah, this is Hamilton's first rookie card in 2007. There is none that I can find in PSA graded. This is the 2008 Pro 2.0. I don't even know what set this is from, but yeah, like it's just I guess like
I think there might be a Sports Illustrated Kids card. I don't think I've seen it before. Also floating around, I've read about that on forums.
Yeah, there's nothing on it that says on what brand it's from. But like all I have to say is that obviously Hamilton Top Scrum looks beautiful. It's a great collector card.
But it's not
But
a rookie card.
but it's not a rookie card, and that's just a key thing to consider.
Yeah.
And we've seen it before with 2014 Ronaldo Prisms. We've seen it before with other things. So just a little bit cautious before going too heavy in people saying this is Hamilton's rookie card when he's potentially retiring next year.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and another thing to add too is that Topps started putting rookie card logos on Topps Now cards kind of midway through the year last year, or kind of in the later part of the year last year, much like they did with some of the Bundesliga and Champions League products for Topps Now. And a couple of the younger drivers do have RC logos printed at from the end of the year. Mick Schumacher, who's really exciting. Yuki Tsunoda's card from this year has an RC logo on it because it's his first year in Formula One. But there was no parallels, and they're just printed. And that first week, cards 1 through 3, or I might have been 1 through 4 actually. They have a fairly low print run. I believe that Lewis Hamilton card is less than 2,000. I bought them as a fan, and I'm really bummed. But I bought one of my favorite drivers, Alex Albon, who's not racing in Formula One this year. And I remember looking a while back and just being like, man, the print run is only 796.
That's crazy.
And now we're at some of the print runs for this year, especially that first Lewis card. From the very beginning of the year, I think because there's also the parallels thrown in, kind of like the Mukoko thing, 16,000. So there definitely are a lot of folks looking at have their eyeballs on these Topps Now Formula One cards.
Let me ask you guys this, and I think this is probably one of the burning questions from the audience is, F1, I get it, like it's a big deal from a sport perspective, but you guys remember, like, I know Bryan, you do certainly, like Tiger Woods cards were like at 200 in December, and then somehow along the way Marvel was blowing up, tennis, golf, like you name it, like everything was blowing up at this point. And Tiger's cards went all the way up to, I believe, like $1,400-$1,500 overnight in January. And it was kind of riding that peak for a good like week or two before people started to realize, oh my gosh, there's actually like a ton of these cards out there. So I think for PSA 10, I just looked it up, there are almost 10,000 of PSA 10 Tiger Woods Upper Deck rookie cards. And so
is that there are, I think, 2,000 BGS 10s.
Yeah. So there's a lot of these cards out there. And so one of the questions that I can think about from the audience perspective is F1 a fluke? Like whether it's a pop related thing or just a hype related thing, is F1 going to be like NBA Top Shot was a question that I got yesterday. Or is it going to be like soccer, where it is truly a gem that was hidden that people didn't really realize just within the United States, that it wasn't kind of getting that attention. But when it does get that attention, that it sees the fruition of that and it lasts, more than just overnight, like NBA Top Shot.
The answer to that is predicated only on one thing and one thing only. Will the international audience accept card collecting as art, as like a hobby? That's the only question. F1 is bigger than tennis and golf. It's fact. And Lewis Hamilton is a GOAT with an amazing story. The first black driver to ever enter a sport that was only reserved for the richest. And he entered it. And you can if you look at the Monaco Grand Prix even this past weekend, Serena Williams is the one waving the Grand Prix flag. This F1 is not a fluke. And with Liberty Media behind it, and the great job that they've done on social media, the great job that they've done with the Netflix documentary, the characters are so exciting. And I call them characters because they truly are like
it's insane.
It's not a fluke. Now, in terms of card collecting, I don't know, but I'll tell you something. F1 fans are crazy. And if there's something for them to collect, they will collect it. So I think you have a pretty good bet that the F1 card market is going to grow, just like the soccer market, I think. I wouldn't say it will grow as fast, but will it take time? Yes, I think it will take some time. Especially those Topps Dynasty cards, because they look gorgeous, to be honest. They look really, really gorgeous. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think another point to add about, it's a double-edged sword a little bit, but, you know, for this year's or last year, really, they're the Tops Now, the Dynasty, and the Chrome products. These are the first cards ever of a lot of the drivers, even if it's not the first Lewis card, even if there's other people appearing elsewhere, there's other collectibles to collect. This is really the first collectible for a lot of these really young drivers. The other side to that is, since there's so little turnover year to year in Formula One, if we're getting multiple products a year, I would be really, really wary of oversaturation of Formula One products. If we're looking at tons of Tops Now cards getting printed every year, and then adding on to multiple base sets, there is only so many ways you can kind of slice it up to where we're getting base cards, inserts, 2 people on 1 card, you know, fun ways to do this or that. And when there is only so few things that you can print, and we've already dipped into Formula 2 and that prospecting and that really that massive pool down there, in the inaugural year, I would be wary of, you know, yes, you may want to invest in last year's products or the ones that came out this year, really, but you want to be mindful that there are going to be products coming out next year, the year afterwards, that are essentially the same drivers.
And
if there's not too much turnover.
On that too, like none of these cards are graded with the new PSA.
Yeah.
None of these cards are graded with the old PSA pricing. There isn't a backlog of. It's a whole new market. There isn't a backlog of, like, you know, Zions and Lucas and, you know, even soccer players. It's not a backlog of Mbappe's and stuff. This is a brand new market that PSA would set strict gradings for with this, you know, with this pricing guide. And I think that is very interesting. You know, I only the best drivers will get, and the best prospects will be graded. And I think that, I think that makes collecting a lot. I think that makes the market a lot more mature.
Right, more straightforward.
And more
right.
Yeah. Good when growing, when talking about the growth of it compared to some, you know.
Product.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I want to be wary of your time, but before we go, if you can give, you all both can give 2 prospects or 2 bets that you are making in the F1 driver space in terms of card collecting. I know you don't want to share your entire secret sauce, but you have to do it. You're on the show. I'm ambushing you again. So 2 picks from, it could be from this year's set, from Tops or before. What's your two chase cards right now?
My 2 chase cards are, if I could choose them, are probably a Lando Norris alternate from the Sapphire set. I just love the way the Sapphire cards look. I think the alternate cards are even cooler. And there's a lot, actually more Lando cards to chase than there's usual ones, because there's 1 extra insert of him holding a drink, which is a very cute picture too. But I would say the Lando alternate is up there. George Russell's Tops Now card, I think, is really, really cool, especially if he ends up driving for Mercedes. And these are some pretty, I want to be clear, these are some pretty deep cuts. These are some pretty deep cuts. Like, you know, everyone is a prospect in Formula One outside of the former world champions, of which there's, I think, 3 racing right now. And so, but that card's, I think, really cool because he's in that Mercedes suit. Because he filled in for Lewis Hamilton last year in Bahrain. And I think a couple of F2 picks that are really awesome. I've always loved seeing Asian athletes perform. There's Guan Yu Zhou, who's...
I thought you were going to say Albon.
Albon too. All loved Albon. He might be back. But Guan Yu Zhou, who's doing really, really well in Formula 2 right now. And also somebody who's not in Formula 2 this year, but was in Formula 2 last year and did really well. Caleb Milot, who is, you know, really, really fast. He's been up there with Charles Leclerc, who's another amazing driver in the youth circuits. And he's technically the test driver for Ferrari this year. But I wouldn't be surprised if he springs into the scene in Formula One. And if you're up on, you know, I can't say that I've watched too many Formula 2 races, but he is a really fast driver. He's a cool guy. So those are some of my sleeper picks.
Max is giving us 4 sleeper picks. That's amazing.
Oh, that was a little too many. Sorry.
Too generous.
Honestly, the safest investment you can make is Verstappen.
Yeah. Definitely.
He is, if you've watched any of the races this year, Hamilton is scared of him. I don't care what Hamilton says. Hamilton is scared of Verstappen.
Oh, for
Verstappen
sure.
is a killer. So, or safe investment, Verstappen. But I think Max is on the right track with Lando Norris and George Russell. Um, Lando Norris in particular, because he has a massive Twitch audience.
Yeah,
Massive
definitely.
Twitch audience. And, I think a lot of people will want to just collect his cards just because of that. And he was on the podium twice this year already in a car that is not meant to be on the podium.
It's not a Mercedes and it's not a Red Bull, to say the very least.
It's not a Red Bull. But yeah, I would say those. And, building on George Russell a little bit, he's apparently the rumored prospect takeover for Lewis Hamilton when he retires.
Oh.
So that's all I'm gonna say to it, because anything can happen in F1.
Right.
You could crash your car and
just done.
Not
totally.
Or anything, but yeah, I mean, I would say Lando Norris, George Russell, and for safe investments, Verstappen, because he's going to be he's the Luka Doncic.
Right.
Yeah. I think it's really crazy to see that, and another great racer at the top of Charles Leclerc. Outside of Lewis Hamilton, all of these folks that we just brought up, and we're not of course, prospecting should be within the kind of the gaze that, like, hey, these aren't, we're really seeing where else they go in their career, and we're investing early, and we have to be mindful of that as investors, especially, comparing to soccer or even baseball. But these fellows are so young; they're all under 25.
I know.
They are. It's mind blowing how young some of these drivers are, and it is really. If we do see this hobby really mature year over year, if you're comfortable with where prices are at right now, it could be a really awesome time to invest in some cars of some folks that you really like and you want to follow and you want to cheer on.
Exactly.
So that's where we're at.
Amazing. Well, thanks guys for your time. I really hope that you will come back to the show, actually, because I want to talk more F1 with you guys and just get educated myself. We'll catch you in the next one.
Catch you soon. Thank you so much for having us, Hannah.
Yeah, of course. All right, guys. I hope you liked our very first episode on F1, and we just felt this urgency to bring F1 content to you as soon as we can, because there was a lot of misinformation out there and just a lot of interest in general, both good and bad interest about the hobby and the F1 sports cards in general. So I think for our next series, if this is something that you guys want to know more about, we want to address some of the key questions that you might have surrounding F1 as a sport in general, as well as F1 sports cards as well. So if you have any curious, questions or comments about, the episode today or anything else related to that, feel free to leave them in the comment, and we'll try to address that in our next episode around F1. So thanks again for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.